Hey guys, welcome back to Notice That, an EMDR podcast. I am here with two special guests for an interview today. So we are doing a Zoom setup. Those of you that are just listening audio, I've got my laptop here, Zoom setup for an interview style podcast. And those of you that are watching, you'll get to kind of see both screens here. So welcome, Anne and Annie, and I can promise I'm going to mix them up at some point, but Annie, as you mentioned, you're Princess Annie, and
Princess Monaco, Princess, like Princess of Monaco. Yeah, that's what I remember.
So that's going to be my tool for trying to remember.
Which I guess makes me a commoner, but that's okay.
Okay.
I think we can have two princesses on this call.
Or queen.
Yes. So welcome both of you, and thank you guys so much for taking the time to be on here. Bridger wanted to be on so badly and had to leave the office today for take care of some personal matters, but he did want me to tell you that thank you guys for coming, and he's sad to miss the interview, but hopefully we'll connect again at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I'm excited. I'm a fan of the podcast. So
that's always so strange to hear when people say that every time, because I feel like when we're doing interviews in this place of like, oh, I'm so excited to meet you guys and hear what you're doing and hear all the expertise that you have in your fields. So let's start with giving the listeners like a little bit of an overview of who you are individually, but then what your relationship has been and kind of what you guys are focusing on together.
You want me to go first?
You'd better go first.
And Jen, you haven't described to your listeners what I have on.
What Annie's wearing.
Yes.
I have my wizard hat on, and I have magical glasses, so I'll take them off. Oh, I came into the commonplace. Okay. So I'm Annie Monaco. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I live in Buffalo, New York. And really my over the years, I became an EMDR trainer, an EMDR basic trainer. So I do lots of those kinds of trainings. And so my focus since the beginning of my career has always been working with children and teens. So for many years, I provided EMDR therapy and family therapy to kids who were at risk with the law. They would get in trouble with the law and they would come to my program when I worked at a clinic. So since I've been in private practice, I've done a lot of work with foster care kids, out-of-country adoptions. And now really my practice is focusing on children who are DID or high on the dissociation scales or coping or using it as strategies.
Yeah.
So that's me.
I'm sure there's so much more.
There is.
Oh yeah, we'll dive deeper. She's also a good cook, by the way. She always makes me. So my background is as a play therapist. And so I was trained in play therapy. I have mostly focused on working with younger children. Sometimes I've done some other things. I was sent by my agency to EMDR training. And Annie was my teacher.
Oh my gosh.
And I was one of the students who like sits right in the front row and who's like, how am I going to do this with kids?
Challenging.
This is boring. Where are the toys? My toys. So I have one of my favorite puppet friends here. So anyway, all of that to say that Annie and I began a collaboration back in those days, partly in order to get me to use EMDR. Annie had to resort to a lot of things. But once that integration started happening I think inside each of us, right? That, also I was sharing some of how play therapists have used the play therapy room and space to hold trauma content in a literal physical space. And I think that's where now, 10 years, 12 years later, we co-edited a book, and that was really a turning point for us because we also discovered there were other people in the community who were trying to integrate these models and really making trauma work, not just, dressing it up with a few bells and whistles for kids, but actually in a deep way using play as a way to access the memory network. So our book is about EMDR with kids in play therapy setting. And we wrote chapters in it, but there are other contributors too, and a lot of people who are dually trained, dually credentialed in both approaches, and just trying to do some next level work around that. So that's
Yeah.
what we do when we do some trainings together. We have a business together called Playful EMDR.
Yeah.
And we also have a lot of fun. And I do still have a private practice myself,
Yeah.
where I specialize in trauma work with very young children.
Okay. You know, and as you're talking about like being that student that's saying like, I don't know, like we ask these questions but I work with kids. I resonate with that so much. As a training participant myself, I was working with a lot of kids in foster care, young children, and the training I went to, as we know, as basic trainers, like you have to fit so much into that time. It's hard to say like, how do I say it for kids and adults all at the same time? So they had this little breakout session, and it was just over lunch one day. And I remember like being so excited, but then feeling kind of discouraged at the end of it, is like, I'm just learning all of this, but how does it actually translate with a 5-year-old who has no idea what a negative cognition is, or like a scale of 0 to 10? And a lot of the suggestions were small changes, but it was kind of like, here's standard protocol, but maybe do bilateral with a puppet. And I'm like, it still doesn't fully translate. So hearing you guys talk about like, no, from like the roots, how do we start to integrate something as robust as EMDR, bring it into something very like natural for a child, like play?
Yeah.
And the urgency of needing to do that. I think it's no accident that, Annie started, her work with juvenile offenders, and we know what happens if kids get to adolescence with unprocessed trauma.
Yeah.
So the urgency of getting EMDR to kids, in those earlier years, especially the kids that Annie and I especially want to talk about, the complex trauma, early trauma, attachment. It's so urgent that we do as much as we can while they're still children and can experience the support of adults, maybe new caregivers or, resourced caregivers, because if they don't, when you get to adolescence, the risks just shoot way up.
And I talk about that, right? Like it's being able to deliver the 8 phases in a very playful way, because there's lots of risks here, because children will say, I don't want to do that. Parents will say, my child regressed, right? So we really teach therapists, and we call it our fundamentals training of 8 hours of understanding. They see videos, they see, how we're working with kids, of how you can deliver this, reprocess traumas, and big changes will occur in kids in a fairly quickly manner. And most therapists say, wow, I didn't realize I could do it that way. There is ways to do this and not wait and stay in preparation phase.
So one thing I think I get asked a lot from consultees or supervisees about working with kids with complex trauma is, how do we go about reprocessing these deep wounds of attachment wounds, addressing this when they're not stabilized? There's like no stabilization for them in this moment. Maybe they have just moved into a new home, or maybe they're still with like their primary caregiver who is a perpetrator in some way of some type of neglect, or how do we begin to find the safety that's necessary to go back?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do you want me to go?
Yeah, please. I'm like, that sounds hard.
Because in my one chapter that I wrote for the book, I give case examples about cases where the caregivers, the primary caregivers, are not able to provide secure and safety, right? But yet here's this kid languishing in deep pain, and now I'm wanting to do reprocessing of their memories, and yet there's stuff going on in their home life. And so I talk a lot about being creative, right? So creativity might be, one time there was a boy who had been badly burned. It was over like 75% of his body. He was in foster care. I wasn't thrilled with the foster home. And I went to the school and got the 2 kindergarten teachers to agree to be the support for him. So I would do processing with him on Sunday. The foster mom could do something Sunday night for me, meaning like she, made sure he was safe and okay. And then Monday through Friday, these two teachers went out of their way to make this kid feel safe and comfortable and taken care of. And within 3 sessions, he was able to reprocess the burns. And to the point that he came in one day and had shorts and a t-shirt on. And I looked at him and I said, "You have shorts on?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's hot out." And I go,
Oh,
"Wear shorts, he's 5, right?" And I go, "'Cause your burns." And he goes, "I don't care about that anymore." Right. And it was that case that I said, I can do this. I can do this with people that they don't live with, right? I need somebody. And I'm also a person who looks to extended family. And I try to get, I have had aunts and uncles call on the phone after a session to a kid if the caregivers can't do it, or grandparents, or somebody that can provide support while I move forward. So I think, again, what we try to do in our trainings is expand the creativity, expand how you can get a child supported. Maybe it's another agency that's going into the home. Maybe I see that kid twice a week, right? Lots of options here. It doesn't just mean getting that home life totally stable and secure. There has to be something there, but there's other ways.
And I think that piece of, you start to mention, maybe I can see him twice a week. We can't underestimate the safety that we're trying to create in the room. Maybe the one anchor of safety they have, but it's enough to launch out to reprocess this material because they have an anchor there with you. And even just like you wearing that hat and those glasses, and then I see all the toys behind you, like for a kid, there's like almost this immediate development of like, oh my gosh, this is someone who's speaking my language. They're free to just play with me and connect on that level. That's pretty precious experience for kids, because not a lot of adults do that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right. Adults are always wanting to teach you something.
Exactly.
Tell you what to do, right? Which is where, it can be difficult to do directive strategies with kids in counseling who are overloaded on that, or are very, their attachment pattern is set up to defy. So, so being able to weave in and out of playful activities and, be somewhat child-centered, use what the child enjoys as your way into all of that work.
Yeah.
And, I would say the other piece that has really been a factor for me, thinking about attachment and about the family system, is understanding that I have to not be satisfied with the status quo in terms of the caregiver's attachment patterns with me, right? And to see, if I see this as I am now an attachment figure in this system. So I have to model what I need them to do for the child towards the parent. And that includes often giving parents a chance to participate in a structured way that they can be very successful at. So, I get a lot of people asking me about, should parents be in the room when their children are processing? And there's not a one size fits all answer. There are many, many ways to use parents as a resource, even if they're not parents who are attuned enough or flexible enough to do, to tolerate what, their children's trauma work. Because, for a lot of parents, their children's trauma is also their trauma.
Absolutely.
And it's, and I say that as an adoptive parent, that my children's traumas that happened to them before I adopted them are also part of my trauma now. So managing all of that can be a lot, but it's definitely worth trying to find ways to make that caregiver even this successful. And structure is the way doing that. And I have one case where I just could not, this parent was too emotional, too caught up in their own feelings to be present to this kid, but it was big targets. And, I was concerned about the fact that I couldn't use the parent as a resource, and I had nervousness about that. So we had like a ball of yarn rolled out to the waiting room, and the parent's only job was to hold their end. And during processing, if my little client, who was 4, if he needed mommy, he could pull on the yarn and she would knew exactly what to do. She would come in, she would give him a hug and say, "You're a superhero." And then she'd go back out to the waiting room. So she and I set that up ahead of time. And that's the interweave, right? That's a
just got chills. I've never heard her tell that story. That's like,
well, because they're on the other end of the yarn, right? They're always there. So it's to me, what play therapy has to offer to EMDR is play therapist training is about how to make the room, the materials, to understand how all of this is symbolic and all of this is something you can touch, you make manifest in the world, because kids don't visualize, they can't remember, they're not well time oriented. So that yarn is the connection to mom, right? But it also had this added benefit of being in just enough structure that she felt her contribution to the process, and it changed her a little bit. So I push my consultees not to write off parents, not to talk about parents pejoratively, not to be like, oh, that mom is not a resource. Like, I don't ever want to hear that. It's not. Maybe that mom is only this much resource. If I give her structure, she could stretch to here, right? But that's going to come from my attachment as well. And it's a lot of work, but it's worth doing. So,
man, I think that piece, because parents can be really challenging. I mean, just very frankly, it can be challenging to work with parents when we're working with kids, but I can't see that there's any other way. Like, that's the home they go back into. That is the environment and the people who are with them and all the other hours of the day, and teachers, and we get the 1 hour. And so how do we do that work without them? I just don't think it's possible. We use the definition of trauma is that it's anything that's too much too soon, too much for too long, or too little for too long, especially in the absence of attunement. And so when we're talking about these kids with complex trauma, the experiences they're facing are traumatic, but really the piece that sets it over the edge is that missing attunement. I don't feel seen and co-regulated with an attachment figure. And so if we're really looking at resiliency to trauma, where it's not, this PTSD diagnosis, but what's it look like to be resilient and heal from trauma, we have to find figures in their world to be able to attune and learn how to attune to that.
I'm thinking it's a case I have now, and it's an adoptive mom. She's older. And so very old world values, everything's a task, get your homework done, so to make her more empathetic, I finally started having her in the sessions to do the reprocessing of his trauma with his birth parents. And wow, how she has shifted, because she's hearing his story. And I just now see this very attuned mother, right? She's now contacting with him. She's connecting. She's hugging him more. She's like, he talked a little bit more about this, and I assured him that, I'll take care of him. But wow, what a shift, right? And, and then I make her be playful, because every reprocessing of a memory is very, very playful. And so she is seeing this interaction of him talking about his traumatic event while doing a parade around my room, while doing a sword fight with me, while we're doing patty cake, and she has to partake in all of it. And it's shifted her that I no longer have to have extra sessions to say, you disciplining him this way, you hitting him, you this, you that. It's now, she actually sent me a fortune cookie right after a big session yesterday. He said, you need to show Annie what I got in my fortune cookie. And it said, clearing up the past will help you begin to get ready for the future.
Oh,
and I was like, I got chills. First of all, that he asked her to send it to me, because this is a 7-year-old that I say, can we talk about your past? And he goes, no, I don't want to. Right. And then I go, oh, but we're going to sword fight about it. And he goes, oh, okay, I'll do it then. Right. And then we're going to do, we're going to do tapping stuff while you talk about it. We're going to do patty cake, pillow fight, whatever. And then he's like, yeah, I'll talk about it. And, and I'm also showing her how to work with resistance in the room, because I'll say to him, can we talk about this? And he'll go, no. And she's ready. She starts with, you got to talk about, and I go, no, we don't do that. We don't tell kids. I go, let's play while we talk about it. And so having parents in the room reprocessing can be really, really powerful. But again, it has to be a lot of prepping to get parents in that room.
Yeah. Do you guys run into, I'm thinking of parents and therapists alike, where like play like that is almost scary. Like it's they have so many defenses around the freedom of themselves to just play and be silly and like let down some of those guards and shields that, I wonder if you guys run into that, and how do you guide and support someone in kind of moving through that? Because that's therapy alone. To learn how to play is so therapeutic.
Yeah, I would say, having people think about therapy being embodied, right? And this is, of course, such a movement in our field right now anyway. But, one of the things that I have told consultees is if you have a younger kid in the room, you should not be sitting more than 25% of the minutes of your session.
Oh, that's a great kind of just like guide.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you are, what you've done, some kids will do it. They will sit primly across from you and do standard protocol-ish work. But that doesn't mean that it's really reaching the parts of the nervous system it needs to. And it doesn't mean that you're sending these cues of safety that we're talking about, which happen when there's a kind of unself-conscious moments of delight, of movement, of connecting to the body. So I say, start less directively, and first of all, let kids show you what they like to play with. Now, some kids freeze, so then they need you to structure it. But for the ones who don't, having like non-content oriented play as a part of the way you kind of bookend your work, or how you help in the early sessions, to even as you sort of little by little are gathering information, you're doing phase 1 stuff, but also a lot of physical opportunities for physical. And I think sometimes therapists feel a lot of pressure that like every minute has to be didactic in some way.
Yes.
And so that, that may come also from our own attachment styles, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is very powerful is for therapists to have an awareness of their own sense of being embodied or not, being comfortable, being silly, being able to, sit in a national podcast wearing a wizard hat, just for example.
Right.
Doesn't everybody come like this?
You might be the first, Annie.
Yes.
I got it.
No, I think really being, cultivating in ourselves the personal therapist kind of stuff around being comfortable in our own bodies, being able and noticing what's going on in our own bodies in the room as a tool, and then teaching kids to notice that too. And that, of course, leads perfectly towards EMDR. So, even in this kind of non-directive way, as I'm just kind of reflecting like, oh, I'm getting hot right now from running around, or oh, I'm feeling kind of tired today. Let's lay down and, pretend bubbles are falling on us or whatever. We do these somatic type things. And, Annie taught me to collect these. So one of the things that I learned from Annie is that you should have a collection of these kinds of, like, she calls them like soothing and grounding, like things that bring you into presence or kind of soothe the nervous system. And they aren't heavily content oriented. This isn't tell me your deep feelings, right? This is mostly notice the body, try this weird thing, and then notice the body. Like we should do one right now, don't you think?
Yeah, I would love that.
Well,
let's do one on Jen.
Laughing over workshop. Vu? How about we do both?
Okay.
We have to get up though. So we teach wood chop pose. You can't probably get up, but we'll do it.
We'll get up.
Okay.
So you can chop from your seat, from your chair.
So so I do this a lot with parents and kids to do this after school. Okay. So because the pressure of kids come home after school, the parent goes, get the homework done. Right. And then it's just this unbelievable tension that occurs in the household. Then the night and punishment and all of this. So I teach parents to do these little things that it just gets everybody's nervous system reset. And everybody understands that. Okay.
Yeah.
With the limited education, we'll understand getting your body reset, right? So we do wood chop pose. So you pick up the axe over your head. We always want sound. And so we go, ah. And so as we go down, you're chopping wood, right? Right? Or we could do something like laughing yoga, which is right. So then
I love
immediately reset the parent who's got their own stuff going on. And
How do you feel in your body?
I feel really good
Where do you
now.
feel
I feel
good? You
happy.
feel good?
I'm ready to do my
Which
homework.
part of your body feels good? I'm gonna find it.
I think right here feels good,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mm.
So we're teaching parents to de-stress. Really, that's what we're doing, right? Everybody's stressed, right? And the pandemic has made all of this so much worse, right? So
Yeah.
people don't understand how to reset their nervous system in very quick, simple ways. Now, if I have a parent who's like, I don't do that, and I do have that, then we have to find different ways to get them to engage in this process.
Mhm.
Because what's happening at home really contributes to whether I'm going to do EMDR processing, right? It's those parents who have high stress homes for lots of good reasons. And
Right.
then they come to my session where I'm thinking I'm doing processing today on their memory, and they come in with, he got in trouble at school, this happened, you
Yeah.
know. And so we have to teach some of those soothing and grounding as preparation work. And the way to do that is in your office. And even the parent who just doesn't want to do laughing yoga can't help but laugh at me while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I've got you from up
Yeah.
here of angry at your kid to about down here, and at least you can start to have conversations with me about
Well, and what a neat way to level playing fields. Like when there's such a power dynamic between adult and child, parent and child, that's just kind of innate in our culture. And then different homes have more of that than others. But we come in from school, and then there's the expectation of the adult is saying, you need to do this and this. We're in this like power dynamic where what a moment of leveling the playing field, and we're in this synchrony of we're doing the same thing and experiencing the vulnerability of it, the fun in it, the delight, like all of these things becoming shared.
Yeah.
Well, and the kind of next layer stuff. So something that comes naturally to a securely attached parent-child pair is the parent has the ability to sort of understand things through the child's eyes, right? They can mentalize, they understand, they have a mental map of, oh,
Yeah.
if it's crabby, they might be hungry, they might be tired. Oh, maybe it's that thing that happened yesterday. And this is the, for parents who come in with their own attachment history, many of them have every intention of being excellent parents who show
Mhm.
up. But then this capacity to do that, lots of things can interrupt it. So I like to start that kind of process with the fun stuff and then be like, okay, you have to tell me now, which one do you think your kid liked the best? Or don't help mommy. I'm going to ask her which activity you like the most, or just little things like that. You start with positives. And then obviously we would like to build the capacity for the parents to notice their children's distress and
Yeah.
have ideas about that, right? Like that's such an essential kind of attachment.
Yeah.
attunement.
And that's that that attunement piece,
Well-
which for me is like the most key ingredient to healing any of our traumas. We have to feel what it's like to be attuned in that activation.
And those techniques we just demonstrated also help with dissociation, right? So, now we're kind of coming into this because why I did a lot of those soothing and grounding was really to get kids present in my office and teach parents how to get kids present. Because, many foster care kids, out of country adoptions, kids are glazed over. They got parts of self. And then you have parents who are like, he's not listening to me. And I'm like thinking, no, he's probably dissociating on you.
Yeah.
Right. And so teaching parents, how do you get your kids grounded? We teach parents to use scents. We teach parents to use lotions, maybe interactive games to get kids more in the present. So lots of, we honestly have about 50 different ways of getting people present
in the collection.
Anne talked about VU or humming. We teach people to hum, right? Because humming is going to reset your nervous system. So a parent might be more likely to go, okay, I'll do humming. Okay. So, and again, we teach them to make faces at each other when they do that. And I say to parents, you do 2 minutes of something playful, I can pretty much guarantee you've reset everybody's nervous system in the house.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
And that's
beautiful.
the start. And so that's the start of interaction at home. And that's the start of our sessions. You know, because everybody comes with a list of, I got to tell you what my kid did this week. And that's not a great way to start therapy every week.
So I want to get more into the working with dissociation. And I know that's an area of specialty. And it's one of those things that is, I feel like is so much more prevalent than we even recognize, or like culturally than what we're identifying. It's happening in so many ways, and it became very stigmatized in some ways. So we're all kind of afraid of it, or there's like an energy around it. And I think our culture's hitting this place of like, we're now talking about it more openly and acknowledging and recognizing how natural of a defense mechanism it is for all of us. Yeah. And to not have to feel afraid of it. So Annie, I'm really curious, you work quite a bit with dissociation with children. Is that right?
So, you know, where we start is how to explain dissociation to children and to adults. And this is where we have a friend here. You probably didn't know we had somebody else here. And this is Almi.
Oh, another guest. Yes.
Yes, Almi was sitting patiently there. So Almi has parts in her head. And so I'm going to give them to Anne. So Almi is just one doll. But Almi,
I believe this might be the part that's been getting Almi into trouble.
Okay, very angry part. For the listeners on audio, that part is happy.
Yes,
right?
now, yes, this part maybe goes to school and likes their teacher. So
okay.
So Annie's got this doll, like a plush doll, and with little mini parts all inside, kind of in head. And as she's pulling out and revealing each one, they all have a different expression. This is beautiful.
Yeah. And
oh my gosh.
Wounded part is inside the heart. Okay. So we use this doll in lots of different ways. And you know, for me, helping caregivers understand dissociation is through Almi, because Almi really helps them go, that's my kid, right? So let me guess, your kid destroys things at home, says they didn't do it, says they're hitting their siblings, maybe they're so anxious. And so we talk about all these parts of self. We talk about all of us have parts of self. And then we talk about how that part in their heart got the most wounded. And this, you know, Almi has been one of the ways that I help people really understand why kids are fragmented, why they have parts of self, what happened to the wounded part that created some of these hostile, aggressive perpetrator parts, right? And for kids too, you know, it's a way we explain what's going on inside of you. And so I have a new foster care case. I've only had one session. They just came back yesterday. And I said to the caregiver, the foster mom, and I said, how's things going? And she said, interestingly, since you met with her the first time and explained parts of self, she actually has improved her behavior. She totally gets it. She'll say things like, my angry part is out. The part that got hurt by my, biological mom, she'll say the name. And so this parts language naturally just occurred in the home for the past few weeks. They had been able to see me sooner. So yesterday she came in ready and willing to talk about the past, where she had clearly said to me, I'm never telling you anything that happened to me. And so, this parts language I just make it very normal with parents. And sometimes I'll share my parts, not in a too much of a way, but just kind of helping parents understand, I have parts, you have parts. Do you notice yourself? Sometimes you get really mad, or sometimes you get really anxious. And so people naturally understand the concept.
Right. And they start to understand that, to protect a part that has had, too much, too long, as you put it takes quite a bit of, of defense to do that. And so I just want to add that you know, with kids, talk is kind of only worth so much, right? But visuals and interaction, and even, you know, I had a kid, kids interact with All Me Doll in different ways.
Yeah,
They have some
absolutely.
creative ideas for what might be going on. But I just had one kid recently, and all I did, I just picked up the wounded part in the middle of what we were doing, some processing, and I just started rocking that part. And I said, do you want to take a turn? And I'm like, that little part had very hard times, right? So what you have now is you have the child showing compassion to their own wounded part. We know in dissociation work, in parts work, we know this is the ultimate resourcing.
Absolutely.
For your little self. So it just kind of naturally, having toys that evoke that, I think, facilitates that. And it's just laying around ready to be used. So
One, and I was going to say that while Annie was describing it, Annie, I noticed this like rhythm and like almost wave in the way that you were speaking as you were like revealing each part. And I felt my nervous system just kind of like calm into that. And then my eye caught you, Anne, holding that wounded part and rocking.
Yeah.
And just, patting and
involuntarily, actually.
Yes. And it cued my nervous system into this, my own feeling of like nurturance and like regulation, and feeling that soothing that you're offering that doll, being able to feel that. And Annie, what your voice was offering. So
the hypnotic voice. I
Yes.
talk a lot about the hypnotic voices. We talk to children, to parents. You know, it's a purposeful voice that I do with intonation, slowing down, and it's many different reasons. It's really engaging to the parent to get me to slow down. And sometimes they'll say, do you want to join me? And just kind of slowing down right now. I know this is an upsetting topic, right? Getting people to slow down.
Well, to me, those pieces that you guys both just demonstrated without even like acknowledging it, those are what are speaking to kids and actually influencing and shaping their nervous system and creating these templates and interweaves in the work, so much more than like speaking about something, so much more than like telling them about it. You rocking that doll is already cueing this like soothing feeling and regulation, and like this sense that like, wow, Anne desires to like nurture and hold and like take care of that part. I wonder if that part of me is deserving of that and worthy of that, and maybe I want some of that. So there's so much nonverbal happening in all of this.
Well, and you know, when you take it to processing now, so you know, if we're talking about trying to do EMDR with the most wounded parts, with the attachment targets, the terrible things that happened or didn't happen, often, you know, we know that maybe the ability to hold that is very, very small.
Yeah.
But we don't want to do no processing. So that's why I was like, isn't a little processing better than none? So being able to, you know, for example, engage a child in play with a baby doll, or with, you know, with a little wounded, oops, that's the wrong one. Here we go. Little me, you know, I have the child like, let's find some things in the room for little me. You know, what's her favorite things? Or, you know, we're going to tuck her in bed. We're going to do all this stuff. Then sometimes kids with those attachment histories they'll turn on her, right? They'll turn on that wounded part, and, you know, maybe they're touching on almost a reenactment kind of play of their own attachment wounds. That's a moment where I can do some EMDR, right? Very quickly, very, very quickly, with what I know about them, their attachment history, and the tools, say, and that baby doesn't feel safe, but you know, babies should feel safe. You know, we want to be able to feel safe. And I wonder how that feels to be that baby here. You give her a rock too. And you used to be a baby, right? So you had those feelings too. And then we do the bilateral and try to be open to what comes up in the play, what comes up. And, you know, I have had kids who could only do 2 sets or 3 sets of that in a 60-minute session. However, they do better than somebody who has no EMDR. That's what we're trying to.
And we're widening the window of tolerance, right? And so, you know, understanding that, like Ann said, even if you're doing a little processing, you're widening the window. And often big shifts happen with little kids, even in 2 sets. It's interesting to
Which
me.
is stunning, really.
It,
if you
it
think
is
about
very
it.
stunning. So this foster care kid with the strict mom, we did his big memory, and she came back, and I always laugh because I say, how's the behavior been? And she goes, he's been doing great, but I think it's because he started football.
Never
And
the
it's
EMDR.
never me. And so anyways, but I asked her specific questions, which is part of my reevaluation phase. I developed, one of the chapters was on popcorn night, which is closure and reevaluation, but asking very specific questions about behavior changes. And through that, he had major shifts. He completed all his summer homework. He, when he did get mad, he was able to come back and not run away like he normally does. And after the 10-minute conversation, the adoptive mom goes, oh yeah, I guess there has been big shifts, right? It's that understanding, like, even though we just do a little bit of processing, you're going to see big changes with kids. And so, yeah.
I think the pieces I want to emphasize for everybody listening is I get asked so much like, oh, am I allowed to do that? Like, as if I have this like ability to grant permission to things. Like,
Yeah, that's right.
everyone wants to know, like, if I don't do it in the most standardized way, which is how we have to learn it, we have to get a solid foundation, understand the utility and the purpose of each phase. And when we really get it on that deep fundamental level, then we can come around and say, where do we get creative and modify? But as you were describing, Anne, with a kid where maybe a moment sparks that you say like, oh, we could do like maybe just 3 sets of processing. That doesn't mean we have to backtrack to say, okay, what's our identified target?
Yes. Yeah.
Did we intend to process this event or not? What's the image? Like, no, the utility of assessment is to activate it in the system. But if you see it activated and it's organically happened, jump in and seize that opportunity and do what we can. And then we can make sense of how it all comes together, as we integrate it.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that play therapy training offers somebody who's trying to do that, because you're taught to notice and reflect and kind of narrate out loud what's happening. So my reflections to a kid in that moment of play are really not so far from a phase 3 assessment. And I'm using gentle language like, oh, that baby might be not feeling safe. So I really do feel that there's a lot of fidelity.
Yeah.
Maybe not
Oh my
perfect
gosh,
fidelity in those moments, but the trick, of course, is to know the protocol very, very well and to kind of yourself carry it with you everywhere you go. I'm always looking for that moment where we can digest or process what the mind, and Anna talks with Anna Gomez, who's one of our goddesses in EMDR.
Yeah, everyone knows her. Yeah.
Right. So like the mind, the heart, and the body, like as like a little memory device for what are the pieces that I need to make sure are activated and are part of our work. And I never forgot that. I think about that all the time. And when I was new, I had Post-it notes all over the playroom that said image, NCPC, emotion, and body sensation, just to remind me what are the pieces. And if I do them out of order, the EMDR gods will not strike me down.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, that really being the protocol is internalized in us as the therapist. The fidelity is happening in the way that we are making decisions and proceeding, but you may not be able to pinpoint it exactly as an observer of the actual interaction, but it's the information that we have as a clinician. For kind of a juicy question here, and you guys may have input on this or not, but something I grapple with is, if we can do that for kids, why does it feel so stigmatized for us to not do that for adults? Because adults are just big kids, like we're just kids with a bunch of extra masks on.
I think that's changing. I think there's certain presenters out there that are shifting folks, and I think Dolores Mascara being one, talking about the tip of the finger, the freckle technique. I think Adi Zhang and Susie Matheson. I think there are lots of people now saying, wait a minute, we can do short bursts of processing. I mean, once I heard Dolores say that, I go, wow, I can come out of the closet now. It's
Yeah.
okay, right? Because I'm a longtime EMDR therapist. I mean, I was in the I got trained in 1998. Like I know a
Wow.
lot of this stuff and I'm doing it in my room, but boy, the fear of telling somebody what you're doing. And then
Yeah.
someone as brave as Dolores says, I got videotapes. I got someone transcripting. I can show change. Adi Zhang has how many years of research? Like, it's okay. We do all
Yeah.
follow the protocol. It's how you get all those pieces in the session that are activated. You know, that's what you
Yeah.
said, right? They're activated. And how are you working that memory to reprocess with all those pieces?
Yeah.
I also think about interweaves,
Yes.
expanding our category of what's an interweave, because there are so many tools that people, have, from mindfulness, from IFS, we're talking about
Yeah.
parts of self, from other things that really make beautiful interweaves. And then we can let EMDR do its work and just notice what's going on, right? And follow.
Yeah.
I actually had someone tell me early on, oh, actually EMDR is really free association, right? And I was like, oh, that's not how the training feels.
That's not what
But
they
when
say,
you
but
think about it really, and this was someone who was,
Mhm.
kind of helping with the whole play therapy idea, play therapy integration is really, there is a lot of freedom, and we are able to follow the client's brain around if we can kind of get out of our own
yeah.
mindset of being afraid to make a mistake or do something wrong, and
Yeah.
really lean on the attunement. So I so like that you brought that word up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate all of the names that you share because it makes me want to go like find more of their work and read on that. And I do feel that the field is moving in that direction of it being more open as we learn more about the neuroscience behind it. It's less of this mystery of like somehow the protocol is magic and so just stick to it. And it's more of like, oh, we're seeing like true neuroscience to support it. So then if we can still stick to the pieces that are like the fundamentals and understand what they are, we can bring in so much more creativity and still see the same change or, incredible changes happen.
Absolutely.
And of course, we always hope that there'll be more research on EMDR
Oh yeah,
for children.
there has to be.
Anytime, any public forum such as this, if you're listening out there and you're, in a position to start doing some research, what we really need, we know that EMDR works with children. We have that evidence. What we don't know is how to make the clinical decisions about what works best in different situations. And some of these adaptations, I think we would love to hear more about the evidence about how they're, working, and, comparing, standard protocol to like a play therapy supported protocol in a population. Like, I think that would help people to feel more confident. Clinicians need to lean on research. It's hard to research children. There are a lot of structural reasons for that, but it's the research that we need right now, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much of an energy in play therapy, and newer clinicians, at least that I see, that say like, how do I tell a parent what I'm even doing? And how do I tell them I know it works? And I think research is a huge piece of that. Is like, if we could understand it more and have a lot of evidence to support why play really is therapeutic for kids and play with intention, and attunement and all of those pieces, we can explain it better, and there can be a much more a broader respect for the child-centered play therapy approaches.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so great. I appreciate all of the wisdom. I feel like we could probably talk for more hours. I feel like we just skimmed the surface.
There's a room full of toys here if you want us to
play.
grab something else.
There's so much I'd love to learn. I'm excited to share with the listeners, though. You guys have offered a couple of giveaways that will get people connected with the work that you've been talking about. And then I also want to make sure we save a little bit of time here at the end where you get to share where can people find you, where do they find your work, because this really is just skimming the surface. Like, there's so much more that you guys have put together and learned in your years of experience that I think everyone could benefit from. So let's start with the giveaways. Will you tell the audience about the book that you are willing to give away? We have 2 books to give away to our audience. So tell them a little bit about the book and why they may want it.
Okay, so the book is called EMDR with Children in the Play Therapy Room, an Integrated Approach. And we have chapters contributed by all people who do both play therapy and EMDR with children. Marshall Lyles, Paris Goodyear-Brown, Lisa Dion, who are, big names in play therapy. A lot of them didn't know that they were also doing EMDR. So we kind of outed them.
Yeah.
And also there's the part 2 of the book is all interventions for each phase of EMDR that are play-oriented interventions. So it's kind of a quick guide to that. And Anna Gomez wrote the foreword. And so it was really a foundation for us to start building a community of people who are trying to integrate these approaches. So, and it came out in 2020, and we still have a lot of boxes of them. So it's also, it is available out there in the world as well. It's on Amazon, and it's published by Springer. So
okay.
And we're going to give away 2 of them.
Yes,
and we'll sign them for you.
Yes, perfect. So 2 signed books, and then the third giveaway is really exciting. It's a free seat to one of your trainings coming up. So tell them about the training.
Yeah, so we offer, one of our trainings we offer is called the fundamentals of EMDR and play therapy. And so it's really an 8-hour course that teaches you how to do EMDR with children. So we do a lot of interactive, people are in breakout rooms practicing things we teach. We show many videos. I think there's about 6 videos that we show how we do it with children. We show soothing and grounding. It's a very interactive, playful 8 hours. And so we want to offer one of your listeners a spot in the training.
That's so generous.
We run this training every 2 months. So there's many options for them. It's not once a year. We offer about 4 to 6 times a year.
So October's the next one. There'll be another one in January. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if it ends up that I'm there, I promise I didn't rig this system. Just kidding.
Then you can come on.
You're going to give yourself a free
No, I will give it to a listener.
Yeah, definitely.
So
go ahead. Tell how they can.
Yes. The way that you can get this is we really want to get this episode out there to as many therapists who would be interested in this. So if you like, share, review, or on our YouTube platform, subscribe, thumbs up, all of the things. If you'll do that with the Notice That podcast and this episode specifically, send us a screenshot of that or an email at our media email. So it's media@beyondhealingcenter.com. And we'll do, from the time that you're hearing this episode, 48 hours for those responses. And then we'll take those names and we'll draw 3 times to give away the 2 books and the training. So again, media@beyondhealingcenter.com. And that's for liking, subscribing, following, sharing, anything with the Notice That podcast and this episode. And then we'll reach out to you personally with that and get you the discount code or the code for the training. And we'll share your address with Annie and Ann to be able to mail the books.
Yeah, definitely. And something we'll also provide is how to get All Me, the doll. So she is actively being produced. And so it's colleagues of ours that are producing her and selling her. So we will be at the Association for Play Therapy this year. We'll be at our summit, which we'll talk about in a second. But All Me can be purchased through the play training. You say it. I always mess up their name.
It's playtherapytrainingresources.com. Or you can Google All Me, which is ALLMEE.
Yes.
And it comes right.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you order it online directly?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, and they're available already. And actually, there's a number of people who have contacted us to show us pictures of them with All Me. So if you get an All Me, send us your picture and we'll put it on our social media. So
that's so beautiful. Okay.
So
the summit.
Yes,
Let's talk about the summit.
So the summit is
My dream.
a dream come true.
Mhm.
Annie does a lot of dreaming, but this is a
dream.
particularly good dream.
Yeah.
And we really want to have a community event, you know,
Yes.
especially post-COVID. We're all tired of Zoom trainings.
Yes.
So that's part of it. And I'll let Annie talk a little bit more about her dream, but just the practicality is that reserve right now. If you do this work with children, you will not want to miss this, because it's kind of the first time that we've had a conference, which is all EMDR with children. We have had
Yes.
little sessions at other
Yeah.
conferences, but this is EMDR with children. It's the first time we're having this kind of in-person event. So
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
have some incredible speakers coming.
Yes, we have Marshall Lyles doing a 2-day, and then Ana Gomez is doing a half day for us.
yeah,
Plus,
she's doing a master class 4 hours.
Yeah, masterclass 4 hours. And then Anne, who's next to me, and then Jackie Flynn are doing the pre-conference. So it's an incredible lineup. So it's November 2nd to the 5th, and www.playfulemdr.com is where you can go to just get to the summit information and then register. But the other piece of this that I really want, you know, the community piece of this. So I go to trainings, right? And before I used to go to a lot of in-person training, and then you're on your own, right? If you didn't go there with somebody, you're kind of just go in your hotel room or you go eat something. And so I really wanted this to embrace more than that. So after Marshall is done training, we're going to have what we call the experiential playtime. And it's going to be things that they're going to be mini events that are going to occur, hopefully outside in the sand, but different kinds of things. Like I'm going to do parts of self in the sand is one of mine that I'm going to offer after Marshall. There's inventing a toy or a technique. Jackie Flynn, I think, is doing something around polyvagal. So after the training, then we're going to have these more fun type of learning events after that. And then I wanted to make sure that all EMDR play therapists, child therapists have the opportunity to meet really good consultants. So 8 consultants are going to provide group consultation on the day after Ana is done, 2-hour group consultation that folks can sign up for and receive consultation from some of the best EMDR child therapists in the country. And then one more, do trauma sensitive yoga. We're going to do meditation. So it's an all-day kind of fun connecting event.
Wait a minute. I thought there were cocktails involved.
And there's cocktails, of course. So
okay, gotta top it off.
We don't Italian, you know, I actually have the food part of this, but we are going to have an appetizer hour where everyone gets to come as part of the conference in person and gets to meet and socialize. And we are doing this virtually too. So if you can't make it on those dates for many reasons, we are live streaming it and recording it, that they'll have it for, I think, 45 days.
45 days to watch.
Yeah. So there's 2 options here, because I wanted to make sure people who couldn't come to the event could at least live stream it and see it.
But it's not really an accident that it's in Cocoa Beach in November, because we're from Buffalo, and that's the week it starts snowing up here. So and the venue is like a 4-minute walk from the beach. So we really do see this as like a self-care. Want to invite people who are healers for children to be together, to deepen our work, but also to take care of each other. So
come play in Cocoa Beach is really our tagline. Play in Cocoa Beach.
So we're combining
our summit.
We're combining professional development, vacation, community, play, learning, like all of this into a summit. How beautiful.
Are you coming?
Are you coming?
I don't have it marked on my calendar, but we did just have Jackie joined us at our training, and oh my gosh, she spoke so highly of it. I'm very convinced and want to go. So she's been talking all about it.
Great. Yes, and she's an integral part. Like this is something we're doing together collaboratively with her. So
that's so cool. We've had Jackie and Marshall both have been on there. Now we have the 2 of you. So really like our listeners are quite familiar with you guys, and that's really exciting. I think will be a huge selling point. So if you guys are interested in attending, where do they find out more information on how to register, cost of registration, all of that?
Yeah. So it's so our website, playfulemdr.com, there's a link to sort of the conference microsite. I can also send you a link if you want. I don't know if you want to put something right in the comments that takes people right to registration.
Yeah.
And there are options. You can get, come to all of it. You can just come certain days and go to Disney. Another day, it is about 45 minutes from Orlando. So we do know some people are going to try to turn into a little vacay.
Yeah.
And our website is also a place, it's kind of a hub for trainings and also consultation. So a lot of people are interested in consultation in EMDR with kids that is kind of play therapy friendly and integrates that. And so we have consultants and CITs who are affiliated with Playful EMDR, and they also, the links to their consultation is also on our website. So it's someplace else.
Okay.
I come for that. So
Yeah.
Wonderful. I would appreciate so much if you guys will send me all of those links and information. I'll just put it in the show notes for the listeners, and they can have all of that right there, so they don't have to listen back multiple times. But
Absolutely.
okay. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And I really hope that we get to continue to connect in the future and see our paths cross again.
Absolutely.
Yes, and it was great to see your face because I've only listened. So
it was nice to get to meet you both. Yeah, thank you.